Activated.
Analyzing.
Update complete.
Hey guys, I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to Eagle Moss. Eagle Moss agreed to team up with me so that I could take a closer look at the ships that I'm going over and in fact read the backstories of them. They create collectibles for all kinds of series, but specifically Trek, and some of them look absolutely amazing. If you're interested, take a look at the link below or consider coming to the Wednesday Geek Breakdown where you get a closer look at the Defiant class and other classes and see how well they're done. With that out of the way, let's just get into it. The Defiant-class starship, most popularly known as Ben Sisko's motherfucking Pimphand, was devised in an era when the Federation was afraid. Being developed soon after the Battle of Wolf 359, the ship was a direct reflection of Starfleet's continual shift from being more of a scientific and exploratory entity back into one that was more focused on a military and defense role. Most canon resources state that the Defiant was the first ship completely dedicated as a warship for Starfleet. This ship would see innovations in technology, including phaser cannons, and at least one ship, the USS Defiant, would have defensive innovations, including ablative armor. It is interesting with these advancements that the Federation, after having built it, was on the cusp of returning to a more pacifistic methodology. After the initial trial runs of the ship would show several major design and structural flaws, the Defiant would be mothballed. This wouldn't even be controversial. The fear of the Borg threat began to subside and it was leaving the minds of the general populace. In 2370, the Dominion Cold War would facilitate the resurrection of the class. It would be thrust back into active duty when Commander Benjamin Sisko would pull it out of mothballs to investigate the ever-looming Dominion threat. After being able to fix the fatal flaws of the ship, including its design and structural integrity, Starfleet would begin to mass-produce the vessel. The Defiant would become a staple in the Dominion War and even be used in operations afterwards. Categorized as an escort ship, the Defiant class receives a lot of unwarranted hate when it appears that the ship is deficient in battle, mostly due to what I feel are unreasonable expectations by the audience. During Deep Space Nine, the buildup of the Defiant was intense. It was defined as a ship with teeth. It was designed to do one thing: to kill Borg. However, the dialogue used in Deep Space Nine is somewhat deceptive. Yes, the ship was designed to be a warship and was the first vessel created when Starfleet was looking for a fight. That said, the ship wasn't necessarily designed to be autonomous. When you consider the Defiant's armaments, its overall size, and its effectiveness in combat, both on its ability to fight on its own and working in tandem with other ships, it is obvious that the Defiant was to be used in conjunction with other vessels, such as the Akira class. The design of the ship would mean that it would need to stick closely to bigger vessels and strafe near the hull as it flew past. The way it was built would allow it to nearly skim the edges of the enemy hull itself, which would mean the enemy could not get a weapons lock. Effectively, Starfleet would have created a fully operational starship with the ability to be used as a fighter. For those who want to see what I'm talking about, and in my opinion how the ship was used effectively, I would suggest the first Battle of Chintaka and the Mirror Universe Battle of Terok Nor. These episodes show the ship at its deadliest. Unfortunately, the Defiant class does suffer from many of the same issues we see with the Intrepid class. There are many contradicting pieces of information, even from the show itself. Designed to be hard to hit, the length of the ship would be 170 meters, the width 134 meters, and height only 30 meters. It's worth noting that these specifications aren't necessarily considered canon. There is no on-screen verification of some of these metrics. Additionally, the props department and the CGI department didn't necessarily care about scale during the show, so we can't really compare what's on screen either. There would also be contradicting information regarding how many decks the ship had. On the show, a Master Systems display of the ship, something that shows the entire ship, apparently shows only 4 decks. However, this creates an issue since dialogue in later episodes would indicate there are 5 decks. Some have tried to argue that the 5th deck was perhaps on the nose just under it, and that it was the space below the 4th deck. I find this a weak explanation. The ship was extremely sparse in comparison to modern Federation starships. No real recreation centers. Crews would be able to relax, if you can call it relaxing, on 2 different mess deck areas. These would be very Spartan, providing little to no creature comforts. Everything on this ship was very compact. As an example, you would see entire decks dedicated to pursuits such as science or ship operations on classes like the Galaxy or even the Sovereign. The Defiant would try to keep everything on as few decks as possible. So for instance, transporter pads, the main bridge, officer and crew quarters, the upper sensor array, and 2 of the phaser cannon assemblies would all be located on Deck 1. The sickbay, if you can call it that, was little more than the triage center that was meant to stabilize officers until they could get to an actual starbase. The ship would crew up to 50 officers. The sickbay only had 4 biobeds. Interestingly enough, as compact as the ship was and as sparse as it did include a shuttle bay that had 2 exterior doors. Again, kind of crazy when you consider the runabouts and shuttles wouldn't be able to fit, though we do see them somehow fitting. You know, this could perhaps confirm some fanfiction which brings the Federation in an alliance with the forces of Gallifrey. Would explain everything. And what I am sure will piss off some Intrepid fans, the Defiant-class was able to land on planets as well. And this does make sense to me. The ship is to be compact, to basically hit something hard and then dive away. The ability to come into a combat zone, strafe the enemy, and land troops or be used as both a planetary defense and defense in orbit makes sense. And landing it would be very useful. Wars aren't only fought in space. Regardless of what Star Trek would have us believe, the ability to fight units on the ground is invaluable. The speed capabilities of the Defiant can be somewhat contentious. The Defiant had a Class 7 warp drive that could attain a maximum warp of 9.5. At least that's the most consistent speed the Defiant has traveled at. However, even for the ship to be able to attain this speed, it would require a redirection of all available power from weapons and other systems to ensure the ship could both maintain the speed and to power structural integrity fields required for the ship not to tear itself apart. Upon initial construction, safeties on the ship were set to prevent the vessel from achieving anything past warp 3.2. Oh, and by the by, Borg cubes have a max warp of 9.999468. Not that catching up to a Borg cube would be important for a ship designed to kill it. Due to the compact nature of the vessel, the warp drive would be installed and go through 3 decks of the ship in order for it to fit. Because I know it'll come up, there is a technical manual that will tell you that the Defiant could maintain a maximum warp of 9.982. This is one of the examples I use at why CBS and others don't consider anything outside of the shows to be canon. Not only would this mean a Class 7 warp drive was more advanced than that of the Intrepid's Class 9 warp drive, which the Class 9 was made for both speed and deep exploration to remember, it would mean that the ship was faster than most all other ships until arguably the Sovereign and the Prometheus classes. It would also be unlikely that a ship that had to divert extra power just to maintain warp 9.5 could ever hope of not being destroyed at warp 9.982. 9.5 to 9.982 is an insane jump. It's not like going from 40 miles to 60 miles. It's not like going from 40 miles per hour to 60 miles per hour. It would be going like from 40 miles an hour to 400 miles an hour, if not 4,000 miles an hour. It doesn't make logical sense that the ship would have this capability. All of these sacrifices would be worth it though. The tactical weapons of the Defiant were extremely significant for a ship of its size. The most significant advancement would be that of the phaser cannons. The ship would have 4 of these installed. These weapons were exceptionally powerful when compared to Class 10 phaser banks, and even the firepower of 2 wing-mounted disruptor cannons. Unfortunately, these phaser cannons would only be able to fire in a fixed position. To assist in providing 360 degrees of defense and the ability to fire on multiple ships, Class 10 phaser arrays were installed at strategic locations on the vessel. The ship would also be outfitted with up to 6 torpedo launchers that would be able to fire both photon torpedoes and quantum torpedoes. Disappointingly, the deflector shields of the Defiant would be standard for its size and not the advanced shielding we see on the Intrepid class. At this point, there are 2 advantages that the USS Defiant had that the Defiant class did not. The first would be ablative armor. Commander Sisko, deciding he didn't like tinfoil for armor, would have ablative armor installed on the Defiant. Ablative armor effectively dissipates directed energy weapons, giving an extra layer of defense and making it harder to penetrate the systems once shields dropped. This was not initially standard, but there is sparse evidence to suggest that after defeating the Leighton coup, that the armor became standard on Defiant-class vessels. There was also the Cloaking Device, which was on loan from the Romulans. It wasn't standard. I don't know why people think that it was. It was also used at any time Sisko wanted, regardless of any agreement, even during the Dominion War. You know, when the Romulans were supposed to be allies of the Dominion. No other Defiant ship had it. I don't care what any other game says, what any technical manual says, which no technical manual says that, but if it did, I don't care. it didn't come standard on any other ship. There is at least one more piece that I wasn't able to verify independently through episodes or any other canon resources. It's definitely possible that it was there, God knows I miss things at times, but I really couldn't find any reason to believe that it was. There has been some discussion and consideration that the nosepiece of the Defiant would be able to separate from the body. To what purpose, I really have no idea nor any good concrete explanations. Though on that note, it was also possible that there may have been a saucer separation option for the Intrepid, so I guess maybe Starfleet just likes separations. If I'm being kind, maybe the separation would be due to warp core breaches, but the Defiant is so compact and so hard to get through that getting to the nose would be an obstacle in and of itself. From a lore perspective, there were only 3 named ships we know of, including the USS Defiant, the USS Sao Paulo, and the USS Valiant. There were several unnamed vessels that would appear, though. And we do know that the Defiant would be on the very front lines of the Dominion War. Starfleet would begin to mass produce them and use them extensively. The Defiant-class would show up in Deep Space Nine, the Next Generation films, Voyager, and even Enterprise. Though in Enterprise, it would be on a computer display from the 31st century, which means that the ship was either still in the database for informational purposes or was still somehow in use. Now let me say this, if there was something to spit in the face of Gene's vision, I think the Defiant is it. That said, while I credit Gene with creating a wonderful and expansive universe that really should be explored, I don't think that every idea he had was necessarily good. Gene was very much against the thought of Starfleet as a military. The love from the audience of the Defiant-class and its logical extension of Starfleet I think proves that he was wrong. Starfleet should be a military, and they should have warships. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Again, guys, I want to send a shout out to Eaglemoss. While I do want to clarify that Eaglemoss isn't paying me for this, and we agreed that they would send their models and I could use them for my videos and give my true opinions, I do stand by my statement that I like them. The Defiant-class model is pretty nice, and I have yet to find one that I absolutely hate. Supporting my partners supports my channel, so consider giving them a look at a minimum. Additionally, if you haven't seen it yet, I am updating my Patreon, and there will be a lot more options for patrons. You'll get to help me decide a lot of the future videos. But don't worry, the community tab will still be used for polls as well, that's not going away. But if you're curious, check it out at patreon.com/lore reloaded. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Oh, and hey guys, I'll see you on the next Lore Reloaded.